In this compelling episode, we're honored to have Darla Noble, a distinguished author and native Missourian, as our guest. With over 30 years of experience crafting impactful works across various genres, including inspirational and historical nonfiction, memoirs, Bible studies, parenting and family resources, as well as character education materials, Darla brings a wealth of wisdom to today's topic. Together, Elisha and Darla delve into the profound significance of being present and creating lasting memories with our families. In an era where digital distractions are rampant and time seems to slip away all too quickly, they explore the essential practices and mindset shifts that can help us reconnect with what truly matters. This episode promises to be an enriching journey toward nurturing deeper connections and cherishing each moment with our loved ones. Get ready to be inspired to create a legacy of love and presence with your family. Thank you, audience, for Elisha Space for joining us today. I am super excited to have Darla Noble with us today. She is a writer and a motivational speaker where she goes out and she talks about the importance of just loving one another within your family unconditionally. And I thought that she would be a great person to have on the show just because in my practice, a lot of times foundationally, what we discuss are foundational items around trauma regarding families. And she presents information in such a very succinct way of how to love your kids unconditionally, talking about building family heirlooms and traditions, and being that piece of community, of how to share love with community. And I'm really big on the importance of love. I'm going to get spiritual with you guys for just a minute. In the word, it says John 3:16, that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And so it was because of love that Christians know salvation. It is because of love. And I think that's so impactful. So the fact that she goes out and she talks about and writes about how you can make an impact through love with your family, with your children, within your community, I thought she would be a great person to have on this show. So, Darla, welcome and thank you for joining us today on Elisha Space.
Well, thank you for having me. You're right. It does all boil down to love, but I think we need to understand, and I think where a lot of people get off on the wrong foot as far as love is they think that love is all about giving somebody whatever they want or doing whatever someone wants or just being this totally passive. I'm good, you're good, we're all good. And that isn't love. Love is hard, love is messy,
Mm-hmm.
love is a choice, and it is a choice we have to make all the time. It doesn't just happen. It happens because we choose to work toward it happening. And it happens because we decide to be selfless without being a doormat. We decide to give and take. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make, and one thing that I always like to point out to people is, when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest command? Of course, they were trying to trip him up when they asked him, but he was like, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. And the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, we all like hone in on that first part, love your neighbor as yourself. And we just kind of throw that in for good measure because it's in there. But guys, we have to love ourselves before we can love someone else. Because if we are always just giving all this whatever to everybody else, it's just motions. It's just whatever. We can't truly give of ourselves if we don't love ourselves. So, it's not selfish. This, self care and self love, it's not selfish. It enables us to be better for others and most of all for God.
And that's something that I always tell my clients too. I usually say the version of, because, there's different versions of this, and it's love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I think that as
Right.
you love yourself is so
Mhm.
important because many people suffer with self esteem.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people that don't like themselves,
Mhm.
or they've done things that where they're kind of beating themselves up, and it might have been something that had nothing to do with who they are today, but they're still beating themselves up for it, right? And
Right.
so I
Right.
think that as you love yourself piece is so important because, there's this phrase, hurt people. And so, and I
Right.
think it's true. If you're not taking the steps to show love and care for yourself, if you're not taking steps to build boundaries, if you're not taking the steps to, not that you have to be perfect with this, because I think this is always a marathon, not a sprint, but taking care of
Mhm.
your physical health.
Right.
It's very, very difficult to love other people. It's very hard to function when you're not taking
Mhm.
care of yourself. And so I think that's
Right.
so
Right.
important to do. I think you bring up something that is so, so important. And many people mistake love to mean someone can mistreat me and I still have to love them. So I'm glad that you mentioned that that's not what that is saying. And as a matter of fact,
Right.
even when you go through scripture, God doesn't allow people to take advantage of him. So
Right.
why do we as believers, as Christians,
Right.
why do we think it's
There's a
okay?
difference between grace
Right.
and just being abused,
Absolutely.
or taken advantage of or whatever. That I mean, there is a difference. And we need that for ourselves, but it's also as parents we must teach that to our children. And the best way to teach is by example.
Right.
So, you know.
Right. How would you, because a lot of times, like, especially when they're little, and let's say something happens, and then you tell the kids, okay, hug it out. And then usually one person hugs real strong and the other one's like, I don't know if I'm ready to hug this thing out. So it's kind of cute to see, but at the same time there's truth to that. So how would you suggest, of course, the model of it, but also how would you suggest showing love that kids can be shown those types of things too?
Well, I'll just tell you, I never made my kids say, I'm sorry. I was never one of those. You tell them you're sorry. You tell them you're sorry.
Right.
Because if they're not, then you're telling them to lie.
Right.
Okay. And what you do is you teach them, whether it be like, and I mean this in a good way, manipulate the situation to where they see how it feels to have the shoe on the other foot, or that sort of thing, and lead them toward that, wanting to be sorry, to wanting and truly being sorry of how they treated someone and truly wanting to make amends. We were big on, how did that make you feel?
Hmm.
And with a bigger family, you always have something going on, trust me.
Right.
But
Exactly.
if one of them did something
Uh-huh.
to another one, then I either allowed that one to do it back, or I would later on just kind of subtly do something similar to that child, or, might maybe ignore what they said, so to speak, or just reach over and take what they had and put it away, just whatever. How did that make you feel?
Right.
Well, then how do you think
So
he
and so
felt or
felt.
she felt when you did
Right.
that to them? And use it to where they understand, rather than just tell them you're sorry. Tell them you're sorry. Because
Right.
if they're not, they're not, but they need to be, but you can't force it. You have to guide them to it.
And I would also say, encourage conversation
Yeah.
between the two so that even if they don't come to a resolution at that moment, but
Right.
starting the talk about boundaries,
Right.
beginning that at a young age
Right.
where it's respected.
Right. And sometimes it can happen. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. You can say something like, use your nice words, or wait a minute,
Hmm.
how do you ask for something? Or remember boundaries, personal space,
Right.
just different things like that. You can just say it and keep going with whatever you're doing. And just those little reminders will help them navigate through situations and work it out themselves.
Yeah. What's your story about? Do you have a story where you saw love demonstrated with children and the family?
Oh, yeah. I was very blessed. My granny was the epitome of unconditional love, and she helped us raise our children as well.
Hmm.
And I had her every day of my life basically for 56 years.
Oh.
So, yeah, so she was a major, major part of our lives and our kids' lives. They saw that all the time, and I had that all the time. And but between my kids, as far as the love, I think you said that one of the first things that popped into my mind was an occurrence between our oldest and our youngest. And our oldest is our only boy, and there are about 12 years between the oldest and the youngest, with the ones in between.
Hmm.
Of course, we were a farm family, and our summer consisted of livestock shows and sales and contests at the local fairs, at the county and state fairs. And so we had been at our local county fair, our home county fair, for a few days, and it was over. The livestock, we had been released, and we'd been there, like 3 or 4 days. And so we had brought everything home. Well, the last night is always a demolition derby. And we had decided that my husband and I and two middle, they said, no, we're not going to go. We're not going to go. But our oldest son, of course, he was like 17. He said, I want to go back to the Derby. And Emma, our youngest, she was, well, if he was 17, then she was 5. Okay. And she said, I want to go. And I'm like, oh, we're not going to go. And he said, I'll take her, Mom. And I said, are you sure? And he goes, yeah, I'll take her. And so off they went. And we told him, we said, now you got to be home before it's over, because, we've got Sunday school and church tomorrow, and she has to get to bed. But he goes, I know. So it was about 10:30 or so, past her bedtime, at 10:30 or so. And they came in, and she was, dragging and everything. And so I said, okay, just skip the bath. We'll do it in the morning. Just go get your jammies on. And so she started to walk out of the room and head upstairs. And she turned around and she came back, and she came over and she gave Zachary a big hug. She goes, Bubba, thanks for taking me. And he just gave her a hug and a kiss. And he goes, no, Em, thanks for going. And I will never forget that. I mean, she'll be 30 this next year, and he's in his 40s. And I still can see that as plain as day. That was just this moment where I knew that, no matter what happened, no matter how old, no matter where they live, where they go, there would always be that love between them. And I see it. I see it, even though there is half a country that separates them. I can still see that.
It's very sweet. It's very sweet. Of course, there's the love between them, but there's also what you as parents poured into them too, where you fostered a loving home within the family. What types of things did you do in order to foster the love within the family?
Well, I was always home with the kids. My husband, we farmed. We had a big farm, and plus my husband was law enforcement, 30 years in law enforcement. But we
Respect
and
for his
and
service.
church and our faith
Hmm.
and and relationship with God was always very, very strong. But and and very core to us. But we did a lot of things together. There wasn't a lot of this and they go there, they go there, they go. When you farm, you work together. We spent a lot of time together. 4-H, church, and I was one of the youth directors, and so I was with my kids on all the youth trips and church camps, and not just them, but the whole youth group. And so there was, I'd say, together, just being together and being real. And like I said, Granny was such a huge part of our lives. And so, there was just this, I'd say it was just being there.
It sounds like you guys were just present. And I feel like a lot of
I'd
times
say
that's
that's it.
lacking. You were present.
Right. Yeah. And I was involved in their school, like volunteer and stuff. And John, he was there to teach, and to guide. And were we perfect? No, we were not perfect. We were far from perfect. But I will also say that while I'm sure there were times that I did not and they needed me to, or they would say, nah, Mom, you really didn't then. I remember this time or that time. But I was always very conscious of when I was wrong, to say I was wrong or I'm sorry,
Hmm.
because because I wasn't perfect, and even years later, if I realize something, I have said, guys, sorry, I screwed up on that. Or, they would talk about something. I said, yeah, I really didn't handle that the way I should have, or something like that. But being honest and being present, just being genuine, just being very genuine and credible, because, yeah, being very genuine and credible.
I think especially now people treasure authenticity.
Yeah, because it's severely lacking. And so when you find it, you just embrace it and you appreciate it. Yeah.
What would you suggest to people that, because we're in a more digital world now, what would you suggest on how families can build presence and connection? You go into a home and people are all on their phones or looking at their screens and things, not trying to say anything negative about that because that's the world we're in now, but how can we be intentional about building that, being present piece?
You had a very interesting choice of words. You said not to be negative because that's the world we're in now.
Right.
Okay. As Christians, we are to be in the world, but not of the world.
Very
Okay.
good. Yeah.
And so, whether you're Christian or not, put the dang screens down. Okay. Just put them down.
Right.
And more people are saying, put them away. When we're doing this, we're not having them out. Now, I get that 99.9% of us use them for cameras as well. And
Mhm.
so you'll want them there to get those pictures and everything. And I think that's great. I wish I was better sometimes at taking pictures of things, when we're together and doing things, but put them down. Eye contact, screen time, whether it be televisions, whether it be gaming devices, whether it be phones, whether it be whatever, just put them down. The other day when there was that massive internet outage that grounded all the planes and all the hospitals and stuff, and I don't know how many times I have heard or read something online, or I heard on the news or whatever. Wow, this really enlightened and highlighted the dependence we have on technology, and how maybe we need to take a step back and have a plan B, because it is not the infallible, perfect system we think it is, or we have become delusional in thinking it is.
Mhm.
And so go back to that. I am part of a group that is, well, it's historic preservation for our state, and we do different things. But one thing that we do is invite children for we call it Manners at the Mansion. We hold it at the state governor's mansion, and the children come in and we spend a day teaching them different aspects of manners, like table settings and oral communication, written communication, just different things like that. And that's part of it, is teaching them to how to speak to their peers and adults, not just yeah, nah, whatever, or like this, but eye contact, body language, how to write a formal thank you note, or why you send birthday cards or thank you notes or invitations instead of just text or whatever. And so I think that's how we do it. We engage with them. You can't teach someone something just by telling it. You have to do it and you have to mentor it.
I agree. And I also think that something else you mentioned is that it was tied to an activity. So
Mhm.
being present also entails and being mindful is an activity, especially when it's with your family, doing a family
Mhm.
activity. So that
Mhm.
encourages conversation. I wouldn't even suggest going out to eat because a lot of times when you go out to eat, what are people doing? Looking on screens. I would
Yeah.
suggest something like bowling or some type of activity like maybe outside and everyone's is using their hands for something.
Right. We like miniature golf and
Right.
badminton and
Right.
cornhole. We like to do things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, boating, swimming, hiking, but we ride bikes a lot, just different things like that we do with the grandkids and kids and stuff, because it is more fun to actually do something. So, yeah.
And you're building memories for the kids, you
You
know.
are. You're making memories for them and for you. I mean, it's so much fun. It's so much more fun.
And I bet your you call her grandma? Or,
My granny?
Your granny. So
Yeah,
I bet your granny, I bet she did activities with you guys too to help foster that.
she just lived life and we just lived it right along with her. I mean, I mean, whether it be, working in the garden, I mean, that was a lot of where we did in the kitchen, in the garden, in the flower beds, at church. She was present for the kids' school and 4-H activities. And yeah, I mean, she was just always there for us.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because, yeah, I mean, it just was part of it. So,
And I would also say too that, tying all of this into when I began talking regarding the power of love and how the building of memories, it helps to redefine, maybe audience, you experience something and you're looking to tear down those past traumas. Maybe as long as you're alive, you can always, or I always say above ground, you always have an opportunity to build new memories and
right,
tear down those generational things that were causing harm and build something new from that.
right.
And you don't have to
Yeah,
settle in that. You can start building memories with the family that you currently have, especially with your kids. Because with kids, everything is brand new.
right,
And I know
right,
my daughter, I'll say to her, I'd like for you to try such and such. And she'll say, I don't want to do it. I don't like it. And my response to her is, how do you know you've never done it before?
right,
How do you
right.
know?
That's
At least
right,
try it. And if you
right,
like it, you can try it again. If you don't like it, then you don't have to do it.
right, right. No harm, no foul, but at least you've tried.
Yeah. So, with that said, you're building memories. And so, a lot of times, what I suggest to people, especially foundationally, they had a childhood that they would have liked to rescript. A lot of times, what I tell them is create a bucket list of things you'd like to try to do with your kids. And also, if your kids are of the talking age, ask them
Yeah,
some things they'd like to do too, so that you guys can
exactly.
start building those memories. I think farm life is a great thing. I'm like an old fashioned type of person when it comes to, like, I used to watch Little House on the Prairie when I was a kid, and I love those
Uh-huh.
shows. And I used to like Mr. Ed and all that. I'm telling my age.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I those kinds of shows I really liked because you could see the genuine connection and within the activities that they were doing. So,
Right.
for others who are more city goers, there's all kinds of activities that you can do.
There is.
And so building a bucket list is something that I would also suggest in
Mhm.
trying to form that as well. Regarding the family, what was your favorite? Now, and I know that you talked about your granny and she was so full of life. She must have had a personality where people were drawn to her because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Hmm.
She was just Granny. I mean, I mean, you couldn't help but love her. She just was who she was. But I also, like you said, not everybody has that. And I realized that not everybody has that gift. And that's what it has been, was to have her and loving parents. And my husband had loving parents. And grandparents. And so, but not everybody has that. And one of my books that I've written is called Please Pass the Memories. And
Hmm. That's a
it
great
is
book title.
using all of your stories and keepsakes and recipes and photos and stuff to bring your family together.
Hmm.
But like I said, not everybody has those things that they want to bring together. But you brought up a good point, in start now, start new, start where you're at. And I actually do a class through this book at different events called Keepsake in the Making classes.
Hmm.
And I have lots of family keepsakes, and a lot of people do, but not everyone does. And so we come together to make a keepsake that starts right there with you, that you can share with your children and your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, and that can go on and on and on through the generations with and so, like you said, start where you're at and put the past in the past, learn from it, but don't dwell on it.
Right.
Let it make you better and not worse. And, because we all need to know who and where we came from, but sometimes we don't want to relish in that. Sometimes we need to rise above it. And that, as parents, that's our job, is to guide our children through either relishing in their past and their genealogy and their inheritance and their legacies, or to use it to rise above it, to leave a better and more positive legacy for those in the future.
My spiritual mom, she passed away a few years ago, and something she told me, she said, "What you feed grows, and what you starve dies." And
Very
when you
true.
think about children, they're like a fresh slate. Like they don't know, like they're
Mhm.
just like sponges, right? Especially when they first
Right.
come. So it's kind of like a fresh slate when we have our children, right? So I
Mhm.
love the idea. As you were talking, I was thinking about this show. This Is Us. It's called This Is Us, and I remember from on both sides, parents were having, they didn't have the best, there were some things to be desired regarding their upbringing on both sides, right? Even though from
Oh,
the
okay.
outside looking in, it looked okay. But so, what's something that they decided to do is they decided that they were going to just build their own memories, that they weren't going to, try to figure out who's going to go to whose house for Thanksgiving or who's going to do what for Christmas
Exactly.
because it was already unhealthy and they didn't want to participate in that anymore. So they
Right.
decided that they were going to, if people come, they come, but they had decided that they were going to build their memories at their house.
Right.
And even though things may not be perfect, you can build your own memories at your house. You
Yes,
don't
you
have to
can.
feel the
Yes, you
pressure of going to someone's
can. Right.
house. Like if you want to, you can, but it's if you want to. It's there's not a
Right.
pressure around that because you're
Right.
building your memories at your home. And when you talked about the keepsakes, I thought about how momentous that is, like the making of an ornament every year.
Uh-huh.
I remember when I was a kid, we used to make ornaments, right? And we
Right. Right.
and we would take the popcorn and, string the popcorn and things like that. So it was like
Mhm.
things like that are part of the memories and the keepsakes that you build. And
Right.
all of those things are adding to. So it's so important. I love that you do the class. Do you do that virtually as well, or is it mostly in person?
I have done a couple of virtual classes. I do them in person. They're usually at either, I've done some at like 4-H clubs with moms
Right.
and daughters. I've
Yeah.
done them in several antique or vintage shops, but I have done a couple of 3 virtual classes. And when you do it virtually, you sign up ahead of time and
Hmm.
you choose which keepsake you're going to make. And we spend time talking about the importance of them. And then we go through making them and that sort of thing, and it's tons of fun. It really is.
Well, it sounds fantastic. If people want to get to know you a little bit better, I know you mentioned your blog. Where can they find you if they want to get to know you a little bit better?
Okay, they can find me on LinkedIn under Darla Noble. They can find me on Facebook under Darla Noble because I used to keep up 2 or 3 different pages, and I'm telling you what, simple is best. And
Right.
so if you reach out to me on Facebook, we're good. My blog is, it's kind of a long name, but it's Darla's, no apostrophe, just Darla's dash of saltygrace.blogspot.com. And you can put that on the little intro and stuff. Or you can reach me at dnoblewrites, WRITES, at yahoo.com. And I respond to every email I receive. So yeah, I love to engage with my readers and listeners.
And Darla, you mentioned that you're an author, and can you share the titles of your books in case the audience would like to?
Well, I do primarily Christian nonfiction for moms and grandmas. I do a little bit of historical nonfiction, and I do some Christian family character ed resources. But for this listenership, I do want to, I think I'll point out the Please Pass the Memories book, which is wonderful, just
Mhm.
full of how to and stories and things like that. Jesus and Xenia's Make Me Smile is a devotional that I did a few years ago that has won some awards. That it is a collection of my gardening memories and stories that just remind us how to nurture friendships and wait on God's timing and share our talents and our time and our energy with others. And even if you do not have green thumbs, even if your thing is cooking or marathons or whatever, there's something in that book for everyone. Love Mama D is a collection of parenting and grandparenting stories that teaches us to love our kids unconditionally. And then My two newest books are Brighten the Corner Where You Are, which is a how to kind of being a good neighbor, creating a circle of friends that you can depend on and who can depend on you, so that you have that circle, that tribe, that group, whatever you want to call it, that you can love and confide in and serve with and just feel connection. Okay, because we are relational by nature.
Right. That's how
And
God made
then
us.
the yes, we are. And then the last one I'll mention is called the Nana subscription. That's not really a book you read per se. It is a book of letters and activities that you send to your grandchildren, that you fill in. You personalize these letters and send them once a month along with some little games and activities, whether they live across town or across the continent. Just engage with them and create memories with them and get to know them, and they get to know you as a person and as a nana or granny or grandma or mimi or whoever you are to them. It just builds relationships.
That sounds fantastic. So I'm going to have all of that information in the show notes. And Darla is also open for if you have a PTA, 4-H club, Boy Scout, Girl Scout, any of those where you're looking for someone to talk to a group, she's open to that as well.
I'll break in and say I also do a lot of women's ministry events and
Yes.
retreats and that sort of thing.
Yes, yes. So thank you. So, yeah, so she has all of that too. So I think she's just a wonderful person to talk with. And I love hearing her stories. I can tell you're an author. I love hearing her stories. So, audience, I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope that you enjoyed Darla as much as I did. And I just want to share with you our past doesn't define us. You have the ability, you really do, to recreate memories for your present family. It's not that you ignore the past, because a lot of times we have to process what happened in order to move forward, but you don't have to rest there. You can create new memories that is nourishing for you and for your children. Again, I want to thank you for joining us on Elisha's Space. And as you continue to move forward, get greater healing and be well.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll subscribe so we can keep the conversation going. Now go, move forward in your healing journey.